Good day, everyone, and welcome to today's Vivid webinar, Building Your Enterprise Mobile Testing Strategy, an overview. Next slide. Today's webinar is brought to you by the Vivid Mobile Special Interest Group. The leaders for this Vivid Special Interest Group are Todd DeCapua, who works with Shunra, Giddy Pritter, who works with Perfecto Mobile, and Brian Pohl, who works with USAA. If you are not currently a member of the Mobile SIG, once you're logged into the Vivid website, just go to the Mobile SIG page and click on the Join Group icon. And if you have any input on topics you'd like to hear more about, please let us know. Next slide. The speakers today are Todd DeCapua. Todd is a practitioner, speaker, author, and a visionary for all things. That include Agile, Performance, and Mobile, and Todd works for Shunra, as I mentioned previously. And our next speaker is Iran Kingsbrunner. He is with Perfecto Mobile. He is a mobile texting expert, an ISTQB certified. He's a blogger on mobile testing and the co-inventor of an automation patent. So I'd like to go ahead and get started and turn it over to Todd.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Again, it's Iran and I's pleasure to be able to share with you quickly, again, a few ideas and topics of what we've picked up along the way and other people from the industry have provided us around building your enterprise mobility testing strategy. And again, this is intended to be an overview, so we are going to move fairly quickly and would encourage your questions as well as being able to leverage the Vivid Worldwide site on the Mobile SIG discussion group. Some of the objectives that Iran and I have for today, again, we want to provide you with a quick overview to these key elements that are required in building your mobile testing strategy. Again, we work day in and day out with many different enterprise organizations, and one of the key questions they have for us is, what are those key elements that we should have in building our mobile testing strategy? So these are the 11 that we share with them and their organizations. Number 2, understanding why each of these key elements provides a challenge and what you could consider or maybe what you should consider. We're not going to get into too much depth, but again, providing you with enough information to at least understand why these provide a challenge to you and your organization. Third, enabling you to decide which are the most important and what you might want to do about it now. Again, mobile, many of us have been dealing with it since 2005, 2006. It's nothing new. However, what is new is the impact that these are now having on your enterprise organizations, and specifically right now, that impact and what you can do regarding that risk, and again, some of the bits that Iran and I will get into here shortly. Number 4, the results of the participant polls. We do want to share these, again, with Vivid being this community of independent HP software. We want to poll the community and then also share this. As you can see in the note below, we're going to have these polls. We're going to have questions throughout. We want to keep this interactive, get these results, have them for that Vivid Mobile SIG for prior topics. So the last question that we'll have, or the last poll that we'll have, will be, what are the specific topics that you're interested in learning more about for some upcoming in-depth sessions? And yes, your participation is required. When you do participate, you will receive a link not only to this recording, but also a PDF of the presentation and the poll results. So with that in mind, let me quickly cover what these key elements are and also briefly touch on a case study that we'll look at. But as you can see, these 11 topics that we talked about cover pretty much everything. So everything from this production network discovery into functional mobile application testing, then into security testing, and lastly, touching on a case study that was written with Brian Pohl from USAA. And again, it's just kind of a single slide. He's got 4 recommendations of things that he found were the key elements and most important as he's been down this mobile path. So with that said, let me kick it off with talking about production network conditions. It comes to a surprise to many people that 70% of the time spent on the network with mobile. So kind of the first bullet here, and what this means is as you would be interacting with your mobile device and you're sending it different messages or transactions, again, of that time that it spends from when you say, I want to do this on the device to when it actually comes back, 70% of that time being spent just traversing the network. Again, this is why it's such a big deal. This is why the network being such a big and important risk to look at. Second, how is it that we can discover those production network conditions? What are these different network types? So thinking about things like Wi-Fi, 4G, 3G, 2.5G. Again, there's various conditions within each of these types. So each one of these and even variations within, and not only that, but it's constantly changing as you're mobile and hopping to different towers, different networks, everything else. But thinking about what are the bandwidth limitations, how about latency limitations, packet loss, and there's another thing that we could look at called jitter. So again, all this being production network conditions and something that is very critical to understand and mitigate. For me, looking at test environments, what is key to a good test environment? Well, it's control. So again, as you can see from the picture here, this is a lab, and I think back to the days that I was in my chemistry labs or my biology labs or physics labs. Everything was about being able to control that environment and those conditions, being able to mitigate the variability. So again, given the 70% of the time being on the network with mobile, that's the one piece that we need to look at first. How is it that you can control that? What if you could not accurately repeat those network conditions? How big of a deal would that be? Again, it would be significant. How will you know if you fixed it or not? Again, as me growing up in testing, that is a cyclical activity. So you run a test, you get the results, you make some changes, and then you rerun that same test. So needing to control that, make it accurate and repeatable conditions is critical to knowing if you have actually fixed the actual defect or not. Lastly, how do you recreate these production incidents? This is just another scenario where everything I've been talking about so far has been maybe more on the application development and testing side, but now thinking about from an operations perspective, how is it that our operations teams are able to recreate production incidents? So again, Aran will mention how we can test specific device types and OS versions. This also enables you then to be able to recreate that production network condition. Again, given that 70% of the time, it's a huge one that we need to think about first and foremost. We're now going to take a look at our first poll. So how are you building the mobile network into your test environment for your mobile testing strategy? So again, thinking about the mobile network, we've got the 70% factor that we've talked about, and then within that environment, being able to control that. And then lastly, this being one of those key elements that we absolutely need to think about as you're building out your enterprise mobile testing strategy. So the results that we've gotten are actually quite, alarming, I guess, for me, in that 11% responded, what is a mobile network, and 38% responding, I am not. So putting those two together, almost half of the participants in this webinar have responded by saying, we either don't know what it is or we're not even planning on taking that on. So again, knowing the risk of this, I'm glad that we're able to share this information. Hopefully you'll then be able to take that and build that into your mobile testing strategy. Next, I wanted to quickly touch on single-user performance testing. So what if your strategy had a way to get results early and often? This is something that, again, we can't wait to the end any longer to do our testing. The next bullet, we think about something called shift left. So how is it that you can gain value from automated functional test scripts and at the same time getting single-user performance results? So again, we're all building in automation. We're all trying to leverage that as much as we can, again, whether it be across multiple devices, multiple OSs, et cetera, et cetera. How is it that, okay, we're investing that much time and effort in the automated functional tests? How is it that we can also build in performance so that getting a single user performance results at the same time, so really no additional effort required, but how can we do that? So there are some very simple ways that you can do that. Again, we'll touch on that perhaps a little bit later, or maybe it'll be a good discussion question for the mobile SIG. But think of how valuable that would be for you. You know, again, getting results back that say, okay, if you're on a iPhone 4S with an AT&T 3G average network for Dallas, yes, functionally, everything works in our app. And from a single user performance results, the reason that it is at 3 seconds for this transaction, but 5 seconds for this transaction is for these reasons, and here's what you need to go in and fix as a result. Taking those results, and this is the last bullet here, with performance built in, now building that into your build, deploy, and test processes in all of your environments. What does that mean for your organization? So now not only do you get these functional automated results, but you're also getting the performance results and being able to shift left with performance as well. Again, huge thing to consider, huge element of these 11 that we need to look at. So going from single user performance testing now into load and performance testing, it's a little bit of a different animal, but hopefully everyone is doing this. Mobile having a significant impact on back-end infrastructure as well as end-user experience, really need to look at load and performance testing, and specifically as a key element within your strategy. Some of the different pieces that we end up talking to our customers about, and again, much of this is based on our personal experiences as we've been doing this for several years, but what are those key transactions that as you build your scenario or you plan your scenario that you need to have in there? What are the V-user models that you want to put together? So, what are the number of virtual users that are coming in via mobile devices versus coming in over a PC connection? What are the different V-users model as it would relate to each of the different device families? So these are all critical elements that as you think about your load and performance scenario planning, need to be thought about. Another bit that people tend to overlook is the transactions per second that are going to be executing within that scenario, adjusting your scripts appropriately so that they do recreate what your current production loads look like or what your projected loads are looking like. Geographic locations, where are people trying to access your organization from? What are these different connection types that they're coming in over? Are they coming in over mobile connections, over some sort of high-speed dial-in, enterprises, distribution centers? Again, all critical considerations as we think about load and performance testing. How about those quality variations within those connection types? So again, you could have a mobile connection, but if it's a poor 2.5G, that's going to be very different than what a very good Wi-Fi connection would be via a mobile device. So also thinking about those pieces, bandwidth, packet loss, latency, jitter. Now we've got working together. So this was an interesting one that, again, we've talked about a lot of the technical bits, but when you start thinking about at an organizational level, some of those interactions that you're going to have, how is it that your teams, so performance engineering teams with capacity planning teams and disaster recovery teams, are all working together to ensure that this load and performance testing, which hopefully is being built in and automated, is really doing the best service for all three of those organizations together. Because again, looking at each one, you can see how it's going to be important for them to be able to leverage this type of environment and this type of activity. Lastly, services virtualization. I know personally many organizations today that leverage hundreds of distributed services. Even prior to moving anything into a cloud environment, you still are leveraging critical services within your organizations. What services virtualization enables you to do is recreate those services in your test environment. There's also ways to make sure that you bring those network conditions into that test environment and recreate them and control them so that you've got the accurate accuracy of your results. I've got another poll that I wanted to go ahead and share with you. How will you build in performance? So again, I'm thinking about things like continuous integration, continuous delivery, continuous testing into your mobile testing strategy. So again, I know there's a lot of people that are thinking about doing or have been doing Agile at any one different levels. Again, this is where a lot of the continuous integration, delivery, and testing is talked about. But I'm also seeing it in traditional methodologies of, how is it we can have shorter cycles and be able to get more continuous feedback built into our cycle. So again, thinking about all of those different pieces, we've gotten some results. And from these results that I'm looking at right now with you, 47% of the people participating saying that it should be built in and that you would like to learn more about how to do that. 36% saying not sure but would like to learn. So the other thing that's, I guess, very interesting here is, 0% will not be trying to figure out how to build in performance to their mobile testing strategy. So again, it looks like we're all kind of lined up in the same area here, trying to figure out how to do it, or at least that it should be built in. Next, I want to highlight application performance analysis and optimization. This really being kind of that ending part of, what if you could get automated optimization recommendations at a code level and have it be specific for mobile. So again, thinking about everything that we just went through in this continuous integration, continuous delivery, continuous testing, as part of that continuous nature, getting automated results, which including recommendations for how to optimize your code for mobile, that being this performance analysis, optimization recommendations, and the one question that I've always challenged myself with is, how do you get automated optimization results from every single test that you run today? In some of the organizations where I've run the test organizations or had oversight responsibility, a lot of those test engineers have been spending 80 or more % of their days simply doing analysis. What I was able to do is then think about this question of how do I get automated optimization results from every test that you run? And then thinking about it, okay, yeah, I could do this, this, and this, but literally taking that 80% analysis to more like 20% analysis and then allowing them to spend the additional time, 60 to 80% actually doing what performance engineers should be doing, which is trying to remediate the actual issues that are causing the performance challenges, implementing those fixes, rerunning the tests, and getting more of these automated optimization results from every single test. The last bit here that I want to highlight is SLAs or SLOs. Again, building in these to all of your tests as you think about the scenario, because there's really excellent ways of being able to get automated results out of what met or did not meet those SLAs or SLOs the organizations have for every single transaction within that entire scenario. So again, another critical element that I just wanted to highlight. Another poll, again, how in your mobile testing strategy should you plan to use the actionable and automated optimization results? So as I think about this, where are those different areas that as you are getting these automated results, as you are executing in a continuous integration, continuous delivery, continuous testing environment, where is it that you want to use these? So the results that we just gathered are, wow, 93%. So people might be also looking at these and saying, why is this greater than 100%? Well, you were able to select multiple selections, hence the reason that it's in a total greater than 100. But really, people are saying that, having confidence both functionally and performance in deployment to production. So 93% of the people participating came back with that. It looks like the next highest would be for functional only, which I think makes a lot of sense. And even 29% of the people thinking about getting this continuous feedback to the development team. So Aran, with that said, I'm going to hand over the next couple slides for you to walk through. I know you wanted to talk a little bit about functional mobile application testing to start with.
Yes, thank you, Todd. So just a comment before I start. Todd was talking about key building blocks for the mobile testing strategy in the aspects of the non-functional testing, performance, load, network simulation, which are imperative for mobile testing. I will continue and cover some of the functional aspects of mobile application testing, which are also demanding and challenging for the entire quality organization. So when you're talking about functional mobile application testing, we need to take into account the mobile environment, the mobile testing environment. The mobile testing environment is quite dynamic. It often changes. It includes a lot of factors, such as the screen resolution of the mobile device, the form factor of the device itself. We often get interrupts like incoming calls, incoming SMSs, alerts, etc. These are all aspects which we need to cover during our functional application testing because of the fact that this is something which the end user will experience while working with your application. Especially if we can automate this also, and we'll get into automation in a bit. This is also something which we should consider because we have a large variety of operating systems, devices, which often comes in, which we need to support. A word about the operating system in mobile, and this is something which is a key challenge to all of us. The fragmentation is just increasing in a large pace, and we see in the Apple iOS, which was considered to be a less fragmented environment, we already have today more than 6 different screen resolutions, variety of devices like iPods, iPads, mini iPads, and iPhone devices with different screen sizes, different operating systems. We need to support all of them, and we need to also support backwards, meaning iPhone 3GS, iPhone 4, which are kind of old, are still out there. We need to support them as well because they're still running relevant operating systems. Okay, so this is also an important aspect, and we need to take this into account. When we're talking about mobile testing, we are also referring to the different application types, and we will not get into each of the application types, but just to mention, we have 3 different main applications like web applications and hybrid application, which combines the web and the native wrapper, which is much more powerful than the web. And we have the native operating system-based applications, which are also part of our entire testing. A word about objects. In mobile, it's also a key challenge, especially talking about iOS. We have native level objects, we have the visual objects, and we have the DOM objects for web. We need to take all of these into account, and we need to have a tool which can recognize all of these objects while we are developing especially automation. Let's move to the next slide. Just a few words about the device compatibility testing, or a key question which I often hear when I'm going visiting customers is, which devices do I need to choose? How do I know that I'm covering enough of the device market share to have confidence level in what I develop? So in Perfecto Mobile, by the way, we come up with a white paper describing a triple M model, meaning we have major devices, we have mass devices, and we have market devices. Each of these is based on the project stage. If you are in the development stage, you may use just a bit the emulators and small subsets of the devices. But then you are moving to QA, you need to support more and more devices. And eventually, when you're going to the production and the monitoring, you need to do maybe a bit less of testing like sanity, but you need to cover much more devices to obtain the high level of confidence in your application performance and functionality. A way to define these devices can be around the domination of these devices in the market, their relation to a device family. It can be by their screen resolution, the application, the OEM, like the device vendor, or the operating systems. Just another comment on this, you also need to take into account when you choose the devices you want to support, the device replacement. Every few weeks we hear about new major devices being released to the market, but you still need to consider and think about the devices you already deployed your previous application on, and you still need to support them. So the device legacy and device replacement and regression on these devices, the old devices, is also something which you need to take into account and consider. Let's move to the next slide, please. As we discussed earlier, the automation. In mobile testing, and it also relates to the previous slide, not dealing with mobile test automation is a huge risk for your organization, especially because of the scale. You need to, let's say, support something like 40 devices per mobile application release. You cannot do it manually. You cannot control everything manually. You need to maintain it. So this is not a question whether you need to have mobile application test automation in your organization. And while I'm saying this, you also need to take into account doing manual testing. I will get into this point in a bit. So when you're talking about mobile test automation, and as Todd mentioned, we are just giving an overview here, you need to consider the challenges you have. We have discussed the different objects you need to support and recognize. You also need to deal with the interrupts coming in. You need to make them like synthetic interrupts. You need to control them and make sure that the application behaves correctly when you are launching different events such as incoming calls and SMSs. This also needs to be part of your automation scripts. You need to have ability to redeploy or reuse your automation scripts across platforms and across devices. This is imperative. Otherwise, you will endlessly need to support or clone scripts between different devices on every change. You need to have like one script running on various devices, various platforms, and there are plenty of solutions out there. You need to choose the right one, but this is also a key to your shortened time to market and efficiency. If you already have, and this is the last bullet here, if you already have invested in existing solutions, existing tools such as HP or IBM or Microsoft, and you already did invested in these kind of tools, then my recommendation to you is to find a solution which integrates into these existing tools rather than, let's say, reinventing the wheel. You can and should reuse your existing scripts which you developed for your desktop and other applications, also extend them into your mobile world. So this is a point which you need to also consider and take into account. Let's move to the next slide, please. Here we are talking about, we have a poll about the automation and how does the automation of your functional testing across mobile devices factor into your mobile testing strategy. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, automation is not something which you can avoid. It's something which you must take into account. You must support it. You must invest in it together with your manual testing as well, because there are things which you want to see from the end user experience perspective. You need to do some exploratory testing as well and combine manual and automated testing. But the automation is a key element in the mobile testing strategy. So based on the poll, we can see that the majority of the voters actually said what should be, in my opinion, the right thing, have thought about it only. It's only a piece in the puzzle. Well, I must say that it's a piece in the puzzle. It's an imperative one. Otherwise, you cannot really scale up. But it's definitely positive responses here around the importance of having mobile automation in place. And as we mentioned in this entire webinar, this is a piece in the puzzle. Like the functional testing, we have additional like 11 building blocks which combine the entire mobile testing strategy. So this is just another piece, but it's an important one. A word about the emulators. Also, when we go visit customers, and I see it a lot coming up in blogs and other places as well, people asking, okay, why shouldn't we use emulators? We have plenty of emulators out there. They are free, and they can provide us also some level of functionality for testing. So this is not a black or white answer. Emulators are important. You can use them, but in regarding my experience, you can only use them up until, let's say, the alpha stage, or let's say the really early stages of your application development. And there are many reasons to this. The emulators are really limited. You cannot simulate real network condition on an emulator. You cannot simulate hardware-based events on an emulator. You cannot simulate Bluetooth, GPS, and other things on emulators in a convincing and high confidence level. Saying that the version, the operating system version, which is running on the emulators, let's say in this image, Android SDK, this is just a flavor of the operating system, which is way far than what you will eventually see on a mobile device. This is definitely not the operating system version which you will see your application running in the real world. So I think that these limitations and insight are enough to actually state that you cannot avoid not testing on a real device. Use the emulator just for something in the beginning, for unit testing maybe, for some debugging capabilities, but then you need, let's say in the feature complete stage, you must move and test on real devices, on real networks, on real network conditions, as Todd mentioned, and cover as many devices as possible to gain confidence. Let's move to this device and to this slide, sorry. And this slide deals with what I've just said. Doing the testing on real devices is mitigating the risks. You can decide to choose a few devices and say, okay, this is good enough for me. I have gained my level of confidence and the application is running. We have seen a lot of examples in the app stores and with customers when they did the risk mitigation, risk analysis, and decided to avoid testing on, not totally testing on real devices, but just choose only a small subset of devices, and this came back at them from the end users. We have seen examples like eBay and Citibank and other big vendors in the industry failing to deploy applications on key devices, talking about Samsung S3, on the iPad devices, and the ratings in the App Store were really, let's say, even mean. And this is why I'm saying you need to have like a device governance built into your organization, and you need to understand which devices are the leaders within each OEM, which represent the right family of devices, and you need to do the right level of testing. You can settle for a smaller sanity on few devices, but try and cover wisely the right level of devices. And as I mentioned, in our Perfecto mobile knowledge base, we have developed, based on our experience, a really powerful white paper which can guide you through what we believe is the right way or right approach for testing or choosing the right devices for your mobile application testing. So do not avoid doing testing on real devices per family. This is from experience. Okay. Here we have another poll, and this is about how does your current mobile testing strategy factor real device testing and when? And this is an interesting poll to see what actually the audience think about this crucial topic, and we have various responses. We have 31% which answer that they are not sure about it. I think that based on what I've previously said in the last few slides, I think that these insights, which come from experience dealing with the market, with large enterprises, should put the focus on the importance of doing testing on real devices. We have 11% saying we use this for QA, quality assurance testing, and 22% were saying that we use it for user acceptance testing only. 36% say that it does not. This is an interesting answer. So my recommendation to you is to stick with the real user feedback. We have the application store to guide you and give you evidence of what is the consequences of not testing on real devices. There are specific bugs per specific versions of operating system and per specific devices. So you need to combine both emulator testing in the preliminary stages and then move to real devices as much as possible.
You know, Aran, looking at these results, and I guess just bringing in some of my own personal experience, but the results, I mean, what's scary to me is 67%, so adding the not sure and it does not. It's potentially a very large percentage of the participants in this webinar that are saying they really don't know when they're bringing real devices, or maybe they're not. I guess what is encouraging is, based on what you were saying earlier, is the later stage that you get in your testing and deployment cycle, the more you want to bring real devices in. So I guess given that there are 22% of the people versus 11% of the people that are using real devices in UAT, that's probably pretty consistent with what you're recommending.
Yeah.
And from my personal experience, I recently went out and bought, and this is no way an advertisement, but I went out and bought a Nexus 7 just because I've heard about the great reviews of it and the form factor and everything else. But I was really disappointed that when I went to use one of my financial apps for mobile banking, that app wasn't compatible with the Nexus 7 device. So again, I think to your point of needing to understand of your customers or prospects, what are those key devices that they're on, and how do you bring the automation of that testing on real devices into your lab for things like dev and QA and UAT. It's a real key factor that we need to think about in building out a mobile testing strategy.
Yeah, you are right, Todd, and I think that from our experience, if you drill down even to an application which is more than, let's say, a year in the market, and you already have version 2 or version 3 of it, you will see that the feedback and the quality of the application just decreases from its initial version, because the initial version was tested on devices like 1 year ago. And as you mentioned, you have just bought a new device. I hardly believe that the application vendor took these new devices and did a short sanity on them to find out if the application which they deployed, let's say, a few months ago, would work on this device or on this form factor. So yeah, this is a serious risk which application vendors and developers need to take into account. So this is a good point.
Excellent. I know that we had another poll here as well, which is really in thinking about your mobile testing strategy. You know, how do you need to factor in things like offshore? So, you know, I know that as Aran and I worked together with a number of the different systems integrators, which, you know, participants in the webinar might either be one of these systems integrators or maybe a customer of one of those systems integrators. But for that person who's now in an enterprise and, you know, responsible for delivering, you know, that company's mobile app to their customers, you know, really the question is how much do you need to factor your offshore teams into your mobile testing strategy? So the results that we gathered from this poll is 47% of the people had responded that we do not offshore. and then going from there down, it looks like the focus is really put on functional testing and then development. So I'm a little bit surprised that of looking at the 100 and some participants that we had in the webinar, that 47% of them are not doing offshore. I don't know if that's consistent around with what you would think as well, but I am encouraged to see that at least 33% of them with that offshore piece need to factor in functional testing at least.
Yeah, it actually, these are interesting results as well, to my opinion, and even though there are more than 47, even 50%, half of the respondents are doing offshore of any kind of mobile testing, if it's for monitoring performance or functional testing or even development. From my experience dealing with the Perfecto customers, we see it often as even a requirement because of the need to do offshoring. They're going to the cloud, and we actually deploy mobile cloud solution, and this is an element for doing offshoring. Without the ability to use a cloud, you cannot really do offshoring for mobile services and share and leverage devices between the different teams. So we'll see the evolution of the offshoring in mobile testing and cloud in the next few years. I think it will become even more and more like a key requirement.
Yeah, absolutely, Eran. I guess the other part just to factor in, you'd mentioned the cloud hosted or the cloud accessible devices for, these teams that are offshore. The other factor, and again, getting back to that 70% number is, what if, you did your, say, offshore development in an organization like Pune, India, for example, and that was going to be developed in Pune, but it was going to be tested somewhere in, say, Czechoslovakia, and then ultimately deployed out to Spain. So being able to not only have those representative real devices that Eran's talking about, but then also being able to recreate those network conditions so that no matter where you are in the world and no matter what you're doing, the offshore development, the offshore testing, or wanting to test it in the manner that that end user in Spain will ultimately be using it on their networks is going to be another key element to complete the end-to-end solution.
Of course.
I'm going to jump. Again, we were trying to keep this quick, so one topic that Eran and I always see come up is security testing. I think the challenge, at least that we have seen, is it's one that's often talked about and nobody's really figured it out yet, or why it might be so critical with mobile. Here's a couple of the reasons. So some of the old challenges that we had as people focusing on websites, the cross-site scripting, the SQL injection, it's there, it's back. I'll get into a little bit of the why. Things like shared services. Again, now you're dependent on, these hundreds of distributed services out in the marketplace, and they're all critical to your applications, which are running, again, as a shared service behind your mobile app. Next, looking at production mobile network conditions. Again, this is how and why things like cross-site scripting, SQL injection, some of the shared services risks are being reintroduced is, again, now that you have these extended latency conditions, lower bandwidth conditions, that's 70% of the time opening up an opportunity where a hacker or other person seeking a vulnerability could take advantage of that extended delay and being able to inject some of this risk into your apps. There are definitely a variety of tools available out there around static code scanning. There's some other risks of things like Wi-Fi sniffing, all the different open networks. I mean, I'm one that's always looking for where's a good quality Wi-Fi connection that I could get free access to. This is the open networks that we're talking about. Other things like being able to take over control of a device. Again, there's a number of different factors here, but doing different things to your devices potentially could open up that security risk for somebody being able to take control of your device specifically. Another element, I know as we talk to a lot of our enterprise customers, we are moving to or have moved to this bring your own device model. What security risks are brought in as a result of that? How is it that we can help to mitigate or eliminate those risks? Lastly, MDM or mobile device management. A lot of organizations today are adopting these MDM solutions. There's been some out there for a very long time that offer different enterprise solutions. Some other ones are large ERP solutions that are now offering MDM solutions as well. But another element to think about here is, does that actually secure the device more, or do we open up certain risk profiles? How is it that you then test all of these things on real devices? How is it that you then test all of these things on recreated and controlled network conditions, again, prior to deployment? So one of the poll questions that we have is, how is it that security is being considered within your mobile testing strategy? And I know this is one that we'll probably see some answers across the board, but I know that it's a critical element for people, many people probably still trying to figure out what specifically needs to be looked at or how to address it. So the results that we gathered from the participants here are 34%, planning for the future. That seems reasonable. 28%, we just started doing this. That's actually, I think, a little bit higher around than what I was expecting. Well, I guess I'm looking at the next two responses. So what is mobile security, and we are not. So you put those two together, 38%. So just under 40% of the participants today really trying to still figure out what is mobile security, or simply we're not doing it. So I guess from these poll results, looks like people are planning on doing it. Looks like people are still trying to figure it out. Definitely needs to be a key consideration or key element that you look at in creating your enterprise mobile testing strategy.
Just a comment, Todd. I think that just answering the 50% who are not yet sure about mobile security, I think that this ties into the latest researches which shown that the industry today is not yet prepared for testing mobile around the security, and definitely security is a key in building in your mobile testing strategy. And the latest research, which was recently published, was talking about the drive-by exploits like being the top security threat for mobile. And we see a lot of security threats which we used to have seen in the desktop area going into mobile. And some organizations are being caught by surprise with this kind of threats. We can see examples of malicious code being injected into HTML code or websites, and actually the end users which is using the device is even not aware that it was attacked by this kind of malware, etc. There are not yet enough tools in the market to alert the end user that is being impacted by any malicious tool or Trojan horse or malware or spyware or whatever. So this is something which we will see evolving in the near future, and perhaps we will see also new tools coming in to address these platforms.
Absolutely. And I think as a independent HP software community, the onus is probably on us to start defining, even with some of the tools that are out there today, what are the best practices that organizations are using, and how is it that we can share within this community some of those best practices that at least will get you started in these areas and have that awareness to what those risks are. And, to your point, this is some of the things that we've already seen in web, 10 years ago, they're back. So, yeah, point well taken. Unfortunately, Brian Pohl was unable to join us today due to some personal conflicts. But as one of the fellow SIG leaders, I did want to cover this slide for him. And what you'll see is he has 4 suggestions that he's made. This is all from the work that he's done with his team at USAA. For those of us that have a financial background, which my previous employer was within financial services, I was well aware that this huge mobile success story that USAA has around being first in mobile banking, specifically around this deposit at mobile. And for those of you who have not used it, this is a way that you can take a picture or an image of a check that you'd like to deposit and then submit all that via your mobile device to the bank, in which case it then clears and goes into your account. So again, I'm trying to remember how many years ago it was. I think it might have been somewhere in the mid to late 90s that the first version of this came out. And again, it was a huge success story and remains a large success story in the industry. So Brian, again, being exposed to these mobile challenges early on, Aran and I asked him, what are some of the suggestions you would have? Here's the 11 key elements we're highlighting. And he said, yeah, absolutely, thinking about how are you going to be able to access and leverage real devices? How is it that from a functional, mobile, and automated testing perspective, you can build that into your process? Also starting to think early about things like test automation, continuous integration. How is it that you can leverage your tools so that you're getting that continuous feedback? And then lastly, from an application performance analysis and optimization perspective, again, how is it that built into your process, you're getting these results, you're getting actionable items that you can immediately take to your developers and have them build that quality or build that performance in to the next release that's coming. So again, these are just the 4 quick suggestions that Brian had shared with us. We wanted to touch on it lightly here. I know that there's a lot more available on that specific case study with USAA and their mobile success available online as well. Another item that I wanted to share, so HP offers a complete mobile testing solution. The way that they have done this is leveraging their proven tools along with 2 other OEM partners, one of them being Perfecto Mobile, the other one being Shunra. And this single slide is the HP marketing slide showing how, again, leveraging the investment that you've already made within your HP tool sets, you can now integrate in Perfecto Mobile and Shunra's capabilities to have this complete end-to-end solution for enterprise testing as well as mobility. I've got one last poll, and this is really important for those of us that are the leaders of the SIG, so myself, Giddy, and Brian. And our objective here is to bring this information to you, allow you to share it and learn it with your peers, but also be able to identify what are these next sessions that you would like to be talking about and getting some feedback on, as well as generating some activity within our discussion group within Vivid Worldwide Mobile SIG. So what are these 4 topics that would be of most interest to you? And again, specifically as you are building your mobile testing strategy. So the results that we've gathered here is it looks like functional mobile application testing as well as device compatibility testing being the next one that we should do, which is at 47%. Behind that being mobile application test automation and single user performance testing, and then looking at mobile security testing. So again, thank you all for the feedback. What the 3 of us as the leaders of the SIG will do is try to identify who some of the other in-depth thought leaders might be around helping to get this information out to our community and sharing what more or how specifically you can be addressing at least these 3 areas. And I would love to open it up to more. And maybe some of those of you participating in the webinar today would want to share some of your information with this community. Again, we would love to be able to have you participate in that as well. Lastly, any Q&A, would love to, again, have you go out to the Vivid Worldwide site, check out the Mobile Special Interest Group. There's also a few other special interest groups that I've been involved in, including DevOps as well as Agile. But there's just great information out there, great people just looking to share with the community and help everybody to learn a little bit more. You can see the contact details here for myself, td@shunra.com. I've also put my Twitter handle on there if you'd be interested in keeping up on some of the topics I find most interesting every day. And then also Iran, his email address here as well for any information that you would like. Iran, any other closing words that you would like to add?
No, I think this was an exciting, and I think we're looking forward to see in the future webinar and sessions around the mobile application testing and development, continuous integration. I think we've covered a lot of topics just to kickstart these technology sessions. So we look forward to seeing you in the next meetings and keep sending us questions and feedback, and we look forward to continue.
Excellent. Iran, I really appreciate your participation today, and it's been a pleasure to share this, again, overview of how to build your enterprise mobility testing strategy with all of you. Thanks again.
My pleasure. Thank you, Todd.